Hi, good evening, love. How are you? Long
I'm
time.
good, sir. Good evening. How are you? Yes, long time, sir.
I'm great. I'm great. I'm great. So, love, we are starting with this podcast live stream after a long time, and a lot
Yes,
of things have happened over last, few weeks. So, let's
yes,
understand, where we are, what's happening in the environment, and it's been some busy quarter for
yes.
us, and so, what are we doing today, love? And why are we trying to do what we are trying to do today?
Basic focus for today, Nahazar, is on compliance side because a lot of organizations, a lot of people are confused regarding compliance. There is a lot of misconception around the word compliance. So, I think first of all, let us demystify this word compliance itself. What exactly does a company needs to become compliant with anything?
Right. So, love, compliance is nothing new. To be frank,
Okay.
anybody who you know uh, has done basic education over a period of time, we've always been either compliant or non-compliant, right? We have either
Hmm.
listened to our parents or not listened to our parents. Okay, we might have tried to cover up certain acts of ours which were probably not taken into consideration. So basically what we mean by compliance is a set of rules, a set of standards given to you, and whether those set of standards, those set of rules is something which we are following. If we are following them, great. And if you're not following them, then what are the risks? So by not following the standards, by not following the rules, by not following the regulations, what happens is you might become non-compliant. And do you have the understanding of those rules, regulations, standards? Now many times what happens is businesses move fast. Businesses they have a lot of things to do. The main aim of a business is to generate revenue, right? To provide with revenue and meet the business objectives. So what happens is in that daily rigmarole, we somewhere invite non-compliance, which ultimately becomes a risk, right? So that's where we probably face this problem of non-compliance.
Right. Right. So compliance in that case would always be from an external body, or a company can have their own internal compliance as well, sir.
Hey, you can always make your own rules and follow it.
Right,
That's what is
right.
internal compliance all about. Say we follow a rule, or we follow a pattern of onboarding someone, right? Onboarding
Hmm.
someone, we might have 3 or 4 uh, you know rounds of interview, and then only can we hire someone. That's internal compliance, right? And we need to follow
Right,
that.
right,
And there will
right.
be separation of duties while we are hiring. There are why do companies have 4 rounds of interviews uh, you know to properly assess whether a person is fit for the company or not, right?
Hmm. Right, right, right.
So what I
And
feel
yeah,
what I feel,
yeah.
love, is compliance is something which it's overhyped. We all should know what compliance is. We all know what compliance is. It's just that we try to ignore, right? And
Yes.
not it's better not to ignore and understand compliance. That's what I feel, right?
Right, right, right. So now coming to the main, part why we are here today, sir. Basically, the center plan to finalize the DPDP Act rules by April this year. So basically, everybody is concerned, especially the organizations, because right now, as you can understand, not everybody is prepared, right? So how does the 0 day look like for DPDP? That's why we are here, sir.
Right. So, firstly, let's understand. So, firstly, there's an act. What is an act?
Yeah.
Act is a law. So, please understand
Right.
that it's law,
Right.
and you have to
Right.
abide with it. Okay.
Right.
So, if it is a law and you break it, then you are legally you can be pursued, right? Whether it's a criminal breach of law, whether it's a civil breach of law, that needs to be seen with rules and regulations. Now mainly it will come into the purview of both criminal law and civil law, because where the personal data is used to carry out certain crime, then it will definitely fall under the purview of criminal law. But if you look
Right.
at the protection act per se, it obviously it falls more under the purview of civil law, right?
Right.
Now, so that is one thing which we should be able to clarify, because rest all, the coverage of the law does not go into the criminal law section. It mainly goes into an organization which collects digital information regarding individual, whether PII, whether PHI, what kind of information, that will clear become much more clearer when the regulations come in, right? So what kind
Right.
of information will be covered, whether that data in physical form also forms part of that or not, is to be seen. So we are
Right.
presently, we're looking at the regulations when the regulations come out, because regulations are what support a act, right? So when in the
Right.
army, like we also had the Army Act, and to support the Army Act there is something called the defense services regulations. So regulations
Right.
always support the act, because
Right.
act in itself can never be explanatory, right? What becomes
Mm.
explanatory is regulation, and the interpretation of the act and regulations become very, very important.
Right.
So now suddenly you are trying to make your compliance people, in a way, lawyers or legal interpreters, right?
Yeah.
So the challenge what has happened I see in the domain today is lawyers don't understand IT and tech, and tech does not understand law, and that's the
So true.
bridging gap, and
So
which
true.
which which we are trying
Yeah.
to which we are trying to there are a few good people who are definitely doing a lot of work in this space, but
Yeah.
yes, there's still a lot of gap over there.
Right. Right. So
Right. So
how
what is
does
it that you would like to?
yeah. So from a basic standpoint, let's say if the act comes into play in April, so from a 0 day perspective, what is the first thing that any organization watching this right now should do? What is the first thing that you ask them to do for now before I jump onto the questions?
Okay, right. So what I feel, some basic
Hmm.
parameters for digital data protection, digital personal data protection, would be
Right.
firstly is to have consent in place. Okay. So
So
I
true.
always
So
say,
true.
if you are
Yes.
collecting personal information,
Hmm.
is consent. So consent of who? Consent of the subject, right?
Right.
Who is the subject? Subject is someone for whose information you are collecting, right? So
Yes.
consent is a major requirement which I feel should be there. Okay.
Right.
So from
Right.
whosoever you are collecting information and you feel that you're going to process personal information in digital form for someone, then you need to take the consent. That's very important,
Hmm. Okay. Okay. Okay.
right? And so that's primary requirement. And then if you've taken the consent, what is the purpose? The purpose limitation is always a very, very, known, uh, you know key point in all privacy requirements. So say if you are collecting my privacy information to send me a simple email, right? Now you can't
Right.
collect my information and start selling it to third party vendors. Key, and what used to happen, we would somebody will take our phone number, and now they will circulate our phone number everywhere, and they're selling your data, right?
Right.
So what happens is, in that case, you start getting worked up, people start calling you, people start misusing your information, right? And
Right.
now with today our personal information in the form of Aadhaar, personal information in the form of uh, PAN, okay, our financial data, our credit data, our health data, everything is digital. So now you see this and this data can now be used for training AI models. So
Hmm.
now what will happen is, if I want to create a AI model, I would go to hospital and say, hey, can you feed me like 1 million X-rays? I want to train on
Right.
the X-rays. So
Right.
isn't that something which is, going to uh, break the digital law or the DPDP law? So we need to interpret that, right? We should be able to
Yeah.
we should be capable of interpreting that.
Right.
So purpose limitation is going to be very, very major clause, which I feel will come in the regulation, that whatever purpose you are collecting the data for, it is used for that purpose only and nothing else.
Yeah. I remember a recent case on that, sir, where I think Star Health Insurance, 31 million customers' data was leaked on Telegram. So these things are, critical.
Yeah. So that means somewhere down the line, the data lying somewhere in the database or some storage was not protected, was not encrypted.
Yeah.
So that's why I say encryption becomes a very, very major control in data protection. Masking becomes a major control. Obfuscation becomes a major control. Okay, and you need to
Right.
understand how to implement these solutions, right?
Right. Right.
So these will be major requirements. And what is the best form of digital data protection? Do not collect.
Yeah. So true.
So do not collect the data itself, right? If you don't need to collect the data, don't collect it. Because the
Yeah.
moment you collect
Exactly.
the data, you are bound to safeguard it. Now, EU comes very heavily on GDPR. So I don't see why, slowly and steadily India has become a regulated space. And regulated space is good for business, good for security, right? And companies will initially struggle with that, right? And we need
Hmm.
to prepare ourselves right now. Where is it that how is going to affect our business, right? So and if you see today, the major fintechs, you know major organizations have to rely on collecting digital personal data. So somebody, Mukesh says, or collect as per need basis and limited as per required. Of course, that's the purpose limitation, that limit your purpose, limit, take the data which is required, do not store it if you don't need it, downgrade it when you don't need it anymore, delete the information, secure delete the information when you don't have the use of the data anymore, right?
Right. Okay. Coming to the main primary question, which everybody is confused, I think
Yeah.
it has been a primary confusion since all this started. Everybody is confused, like how to differentiate between a controller and a processor. Like any student who comes to me for privacy, this is the first thing they ask me. So what is the difference between a controller and a processor, and how do we differentiate? How do we decide? Because in a company there's many stakeholders parallel, right? You have third party suppliers, also you have organization itself. So how to decide who is a controller, who is a processor in a real time?
Okay, I will give you a very simple example of
Yeah.
uh, LinkedIn, right? So on LinkedIn, if you see, right, LinkedIn, there is a badge. LinkedIn provides a badge, which says verified. So if you go against my profile, it says verified, right? So what LinkedIn has done is, LinkedIn has by some means done a KYC. Okay, LinkedIn by some means has done a KYC, and
Okay.
this KYC, it has outsourced to someone, right? Because LinkedIn does not want to do it itself. It will have to develop some solution. It might have to build in some APIs, have some software engineering. Then it has to deal with the Aadhaar database, fetch the data from there, right? So there is going to be complexity involved. So what uh, LinkedIn does, LinkedIn hires an organization, and this organization I've dealt with many times. It's a company called Hyperverge, right? So what Hyperverge does is, Hyperverge interacts with the Aadhaar database, right, through an API integration. Aadhaar integrate, calls the Hyperverge calls the Aadhaar API. It's authorized, okay, and then it processes the data. On whose request, right? On LinkedIn's request, because LinkedIn is hired Hyperverge, and now Hyperverge may not store the data, because liability will then shift on Hyperverge. So Hyperverge will not store the data. Hyperverge will give this data to LinkedIn and say, it's your wish. Where do you want to store it? My task was to fetch the data, give it to you as per the law. So I have processed the information. So I'm the processor. But ultimately, who asked me to get it? So who becomes the controller for this information, right? Who has requested? Who has determined the purpose, right? So LinkedIn has determined the purpose. So who is the processor? Sorry, who's the controller? LinkedIn is the controller, right? Because control is with LinkedIn, right? Whereas processor, right, is one who is processing the information, right? So
Okay. Okay.
so he has processed it, right, and now he's given it to you. You are the controller. You determine what is the purpose, right?
Okay.
right? Now in this case there will be many variations. Hyperverge might decide to, store it, right, on guidance from LinkedIn, or LinkedIn might decide to store it, right? So there will be many such scenarios which will come under, whether I am the processor or you are the processor, I am the controller or you are the controller. So ultimately LinkedIn is the controller because they have determined the purpose, right? I hope this makes sense.
Yes, sir. Definitely, perfectly makes sense.
Okay,
So
what's next?
then what is a sub-processor, sir? We discussed regarding processor here. Then what is a sub-processor? There is a new term out there.
Okay, it might so happen that, you know Hyperverge over a period of time decides that it's becoming too heavy for them, so they outsource it to one more entity. Right? They outsource it to some other API. It might so happen that Hyperverge is also dependent on some third party API. Okay. And then Hyperverge responsibility is to disclose to LinkedIn that, listen, I'm not directly doing it. I am also dependent on a third party API. And that third party API becomes a sub processor. But ultimately, whose accountability is, no matter how many sub processors are there, the accountability remains with LinkedIn. Responsibilities would lie with the Hyperverge, with sub-processors if they have any. I'm just taking the Hyperverge name. There could be many such, uh, you know, KYC providers. They are one of the best. Hyperverge is one of the best. Yeah. So I don't know the architecture. You know, I just need. I'm just giving an example. So it might be any KYC service provider. Why only Hyperverge, right? So that's the flow. That's the flow.
Okay, okay. Now, let's say some goof up happens at the sub processing side, sir. Let's say they had a data breach. So, who
Okay.
will be penalized? This processor who has hired the sub processor, or the controller who might not be aware that there is a sub processor altogether? Because sometimes these guys don't even inform.
So that's where the due diligence of the controller comes in, right?
Yes, yes,
So that's where the due diligence of the controller. So controller has to take a lot of due diligence into action. So it has to go and carry out that third party risk management or third party risk assessment. That, are you dependent on any more sub processors, or is it your own functionality, right?
right,
And these are the questions I ask, right? Okay, if I go I consult with some company, and we are assessing
right,
third party risk, and many times we have seen software developers, they will say, yeah, yeah, we are doing it all by ourselves, and then you come to know they're dependent on multiple third party APIs which are not
right.
handling the information securely. And there are very very great chances that there is a side channel attack at the sub processor end itself. Before the data is getting encrypted, there is a leakage happening.
Hmm.
And I don't want to name it. There have been multiple instances from the sub processor end itself.
Right. So in this case, as a part of the due diligence, does the controller has to put in some sort of clauses in the contractual terms where the agreements are happening?
Not only contracts, not only contracts. Why contracts? There has to be maybe a
Audit?
audit. Yeah, yeah.
Yes,
There needs
yes,
to be an
yes.
audit. There could be
Right,
a document review, right?
right,
There could
right,
be a, if you want a SOC audit done, you did a SOC audit done, or you need a compliance audit done. You want to get an architectural audit done. Okay,
right.
there could be many things. There are many times sub processors don't know they are storing the data unknowingly in their data, in their storage. They're not
Hmm.
aware. And such situations
Okay,
have also arisen when you were giving it to the processor, but at the same time you had a hook which was storing the data somewhere in the cloud, and then that
right,
cloud bucket was exposed to public. So a simple
right,
misconfiguration led to a data breach.
right, right, sir.
This was an era when AWS had, by default, S3 storage as public. right?
Right.
So
Right.
do you architecture, and that's why I say, enterprise architecture is so important. There is
Mm.
such a great requirement of having an enterprise architect in place. Today you need an enterprise security architect, not only an enterprise architect,
Right. So true.
right? Yeah.
Yep. Yep. Good. The next thing which is my in my mind is that, sir, there is a very famous thing, data subject request erasure, like right to be forgotten, is there in the DPDP.
uh,
So
mhm.
who is basically responsible for fulfilling this respect request? Is it the controller or the processor? Is a joint responsibility, because data is everywhere, right?
No, so see, processor actually ideally does not store data. Processor is only supposed to take it, process it,
Mm.
provide it. It's not supposed to store. That's one of the major requirements. A processor never
Okay.
stores the data. Processor is only processing it and give it. It might have a temporary storage and then it has to purge it.
Okay. Okay.
Okay. Now
Right.
data goes to the controller. Controller has stored it, right?
Hmm.
Now there are many cases where controller says, okay, I can't store, I don't have the facility. Can you store it for me?
Let me add a third party storage, yeah, or a cloud service provider, right?
Or you tell the processor, can you store it for me? There
Right.
are
Right.
many
Right.
times companies do that because to earn revenue, but in an ideal situation, processes are not supposed to store data. Ideal
Right.
situation, right?
Right.
But rules can be broken, rules can be comprehended. Anyways, if you're storing the data, encrypt it, ensure
Right.
that it does not get violated, right? Now the problem statement comes when the subject says, hey, listen, I want to be forgotten from your database. So what the controller does, controller forgets him from his database, but he forgot that he also had something stored here. So that complete architecture should be cleared, automation, whether automation is there, not there. So in a standard environment, what happens is the controller has the data. Okay. I make a request for forgotten to be forgotten. Okay. You purge the data from your database. That should be the
Right.
workflow.
Right. So, do we need to have retention policies in place just for this perspective, so that we basically understand how they are purging the data?
So having retention policy is a very, very great thing, and building it into your software is one more great, requirement.
R-
So whenever
Right.
you're building a solution, if there is a compliance requirement of storing the data only for say 3 years, so
Right.
you should code it into you should hard code it into your workflow that after 3 years, purge the data, send an email to the subject that your data has been removed, right? So retention policy will definitely help. And today's digitized world, it cannot be manual, it has to be automated.
Right. Okay. So let's say I'll discuss a similar case which happened with Facebook and Cambridge Analytica. Let's say a company originally contracted a processor, and
Uh-huh.
the processor independently starts analyzing the collected data for their internal business analytics. So how will
Yeah,
DPDP address this sort of situation? Because it's happened already, right?
it has happened and it will happen. It has happened
Yeah.
and it will happen, and that's where no, it's the controller.
Yeah.
Ultimately, it's the controller.
Hmm.
You know, controller should have strict legal liability worked out in the contracts with the processor. Because see, processor will have access to a lot of data, and then it can do a side, it can do a storage attack. It can start storing it somewhere, right?
Okay.
So ultimately liability rests with controller. But if processor does this and violates the contract, then processor is accountable, right?
Yep.
If controller does his or her due diligence, you know ensures that they have been able to, but you can hide such things. So that's why contractually you need to be very, very strong, and your audit should be very, very strong,
Right.
right?
Okay. And I think in adding to that, as a part of due diligence, you already mentioned that we need to do periodic audits, we need to do periodic risk assessments, just to make sure that these things are not happening, right?
Of course, yes, yes, yes. It's gonna be critical. And I look at EU. EU comes in very heavily, so it's gonna come in. So I've been with the, when I was in the army. Also, I was when there was this DPDP being formed. We were part of one small cohort, right? So I'm aware, and the government is gonna come up very strongly because there's a lot which can go wrong over a period of time. So how you handle your personal data is going to become very critical with AI coming in, with data train, with you so much of model training happening. Data is not the no more the new oil. Data is the oil right now. Everybody wants data to train their models. I want security data to train my AI model for behavioral analytics. So data is the king right now, or queen right now.
Yes, that's so true. And while talking about all this, the very important thing which should be, I think, definitely addressed is what is DPI and what is PI, and what is the difference between these two. There's a lot of confusion between these two. And does the processor need to perform their own DPI, or controller has to perform it? Like, a lot of confusion around DPI always happens.
So the DPI is a GDPR concept. Whether it will come in, uh, it will some form come in a way. Uh,
Yeah.
DPI can be carried out by anyone.
Okay.
If I am handling private information, I can carry out a DPI,
Right.
right? And see that how, if in case privacy data is leaked out from my end, what will be the impact. See, it's not
Hmm.
that only controller needs to do it or only the processor needs to do it, right?
Right.
A controller can put into action as a part of external compliance on the processor to get a DPIA done, right?
Right.
And a controller will definitely do a DPI for themselves to see that are there any gaps in their environment or architecture,
Right.
right?
Right.
What was the second question?
Uh, I think it was what is DPI
Who is
and
supposed to do
PIA.
it? Yeah,
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 who is
yeah,
supposed to do it? Right. Right.
yeah, yeah. And anybody, DPI, you can do it for anybody can, any controller, any processor, any sub processor is free to do it. Unless there is a regulatory requirement that a processor will do it twice yearly or thrice a yearly or whatever the compliance requirement says. But individually, you should do it as part of your contracts or whatever your internal compliance tells you.
Hmm. Okay. Okay.
So,
And
love, I think we're good
hmm,
for today. I think we spent around 30 minutes, and we'll continue as and when regulations keep coming in, right?
definitely,
I, I'll
definitely.
take this I'll take this moment to also introduce our you know services which we have introduced, and we are making certain headway with it. And what we have done, love, now we have launched military grade cybersecurity services, wherein we have a multiple array of services available to SMBs and SMEs, basically small business. We're trying to help out small business. I see a lot of small businesses struggling, a lot of small
Right.
government entities also struggling. So recently we
Right.
did a very very big cohort with Mighty, right, love? So that was wonderful,
Right.
right? We
Right.
we 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 did three compliance standard trainings for Mighty, and that was really a great experience. So that's what I
Right.
said. We have to impart our knowledge. We have to share our learning in the space, right? And that's why what we have done is we've launched our military grade cybersecurity services, where we are doing helping out customers who cannot afford a wide range of tools and services from big grade MSSPs, right? So what we've done is we've launched a vulnerability scanning, standard cybersecurity services, SOC services we've given. We are doing VAPTs, blue teaming, red teaming. So a whole lot of uh, cybersecurity services which we have launched, and we are now promoting it, very low priced, very high grade. Okay, so that's what we're doing. Mukesh has a question. How data would be controlled when any shopkeeper is collecting our data and we are doing UPI payment? So, Mukesh, it's the shopkeeper is not collecting your data if you look at it, right? The shopkeeper is just, he doesn't collect your data if you look at it, right? He's not collecting any digital data of yours. So, firstly, the consent comes into picture, right? If you are giving any digital data. In UPI payment, you don't give any digital data, right? You just scan the
Yeah,
QR code and give it. There's
it's
no phone
between the
number
bank
exchange.
merchants. Yeah, it's between the bank merchants, right?
The data is exchanged between the bank merchants.
Right, right.
Even Paytm becomes or UPI becomes a processor. To be frank,
Yes, yes,
there's no data. Only the transaction data is stored, right?
right.
So it's not collecting any PII of yours. To be frank,
Hmm.
there is certain financial information, but that's more of a transaction information with, I'll
That
say,
too is also
obfuscate.
not. That too is also not there, sir. They send it in tokenization
It's
format. No.
obfuscate. Yeah, it goes in
Yeah, yeah,
tokenization and obfuscated
yeah.
manner, right? So
Right,
all those
right,
controls are in place. So the shopkeeper is just, he doesn't even collect the data. He doesn't even become a controller. He's just a merchant.
right, right. So when we talk about services now, sir, a lot of people, think that very costly affairs, because I think many people have misconception that they would be spending like hell lot of money on cybersecurity and all that. It's a big misconception. So when we are launching these services, are we sort of giving some sort of benefits to the startups, because we ourselves are startups, right? So can we do some sort of differentiating factor over there, like that? That's what I was thinking. Just yeah.
Yeah. So, love, what we do, we do not go, we do not go and provide our services without doing a proper gap assessment. And we tell the
That's
customer
true.
before,
That's true.
without even
Yeah.
charging any money. What we do is
Yes.
we tell, look, these are your gaps. This is what you need. Whether you
Right.
might have a budget or not, right? You
Right.
may not have
Right.
a budget for that. So what we do is we say, okay, if you don't have a budget, this is what you should do minimum, at
Right.
least,
Right.
least
Right.
possible, do this.
Right.
And we've helped many such startups to, to navigate their cybersecurity requirements,
We
right?
have. Right. Right. We have. Right.
Yeah.
So Mukesh is again coming back. I think he's not happy with the shopkeepers.
So shopkeepers, so see what happens is, shopkeepers are just, you know they're not taking digital data, please understand. So if you say it is not Privacy Protection Act, please understand, Mukesh, it's digital data, digital,
Personal
data
data.
protection.
Yeah.
Yeah, digital personal data. So what is digital personal data? Please understand, your mobile number is not a digital personal data. It's your PII, but it's not a digital personal data. Please understand. So you will have to see the regulations as to how the regulations are interpreted. So shopkeeper taking your mobile number may not be a digital personal data. Just have a thought over it. A shopkeeper taking your email may not be a digital personal data. Your digital personal data is what something identifies you. Your Aadhaar is a digital personal data, right? Your PAN is digital personal data, right? And maybe tomorrow, if somebody is taking your mobile number or email, they cannot take it unless you give a consent. So, if they ask you, then only you give. You say otherwise. Many times I don't give. I say, "What's your mobile number?" I say 8888888.
Yeah. Right. I think it all depends upon consent. You're absolutely right, sir. Like if you're not happy with the shopkeeper, just don't give it. Simple. Go to another shop.
Yeah, yeah. I
Yeah.
don't give it. No, it's not another shop. I don't give it. I
Yeah.
said I can't give it. Sorry.
Yeah.
And they
Simple.
don't. They don't
Right.
insist. They don't insist. Right.
Right. Right. Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you so much for your time, sir. It has been a great session, a lot of learning,
Right.
and
Right.
especially the writing pad. I think it was you were making things absolutely much more clear. So definitely, a lot of people
Yeah.
would have.
I love whiteboarding, so I don't make slides.
Yeah,
I
it
explain
was
on the
really
fly.
good experience. I have never seen somebody doing that on a live session. Thank you so much, sir. Yeah,
Right. Thank you so much. Slides are, nobody reads slides.
yeah. Gone are the days now. Yeah,
Yeah. Gone are
yeah.
the days of slides. You should put your
Right,
knowledge on paper, I guess, digital paper.
right, right.
Right. Thanks, love. Thanks for the session. We will
Thank you,
keep
sir.
coming
Thank
often and try to, educate more and more.
you.
Thank you
Right,
so much. Take
right.
care. Bye bye.
Thank you. Bye bye.